From the impact it's made to the number of people who believe it's a top-tier sport, here's why boxing will always be way better than UFC. While it's true that each sport has a place of its own, there's a reason why most fighting legends are boxers. When it comes to combat sports, UFC and boxing are two of the biggest names that come to mind. But looking back at history, boxing has been around for much longer and has produced some of the biggest legends in the sport, such as Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Mike Tyson. Comparing the two is like comparing Major League Soccer to Major League Baseball. While soccer is gaining popularity, baseball is still a bigger part of American culture. That being said, UFC has had its fair share of great fighters and has been gaining popularity in recent years. But when it comes to the all-time greats, boxing still reigns supreme, and honestly, it always will. Fans love boxing with a passion, maybe because boxing is way more accessible. Nowadays, the UFC has a larger presence on television around the world, with multiple live events happening every month of the year. Boxing, on the other hand, has weekly Friday night fights on the ESPN networks. NBC is looking to boost its sports brand by promoting boxing cards on its over-the-air network. There are also HBO World Championship Boxing and Showtime Championship Boxing, and fans can watch overseas fights via streaming websites. This means that boxing enthusiasts can enjoy live fights all year round, without having to wait long periods between events. But that's not the only good part. It doesn't focus on drama, but on the sport itself, unlike the UFC. Some combat sports fans are not interested in the WWE-style hype and drama that the UFC tends to promote. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely one of them. I want to see two skilled fighters go head-to-head without any gimmicks or theatrics. Granted, boxing does use some promotional tactics, such as press conferences and interviews.
I'm gonna record all the negotiations so you guys don't make no headlines saying I'm ducking.
The focus, however, is mainly on the fighter's skill and who will come out on top in the ring. On the other hand, the UFC often creates storylines and casts fighters as either the good guy or the bad guy. And honestly, these can sometimes feel forced and taken away from the actual fight itself. For those who prefer a more straightforward approach to combat sports, like me, boxing is the way to go. But creating all this drama had another negative impact on UFC. They're prioritizing the wrong things now. When it comes to promoting their fighters, both UFC and boxing could use some improvement. However, the UFC tends to prioritize hype over substance these days. For instance, they gave Brock Lesnar a heavyweight title shot long before he had earned it. Now they've signed former WWE wrestler CM Punk, and now Punk isn't expected to do much beyond drawing in wrestling fans for a couple of fights. While pro wrestlers are certainly impressive athletes, it's not like they can easily transition into the world of boxing. In the end, it's important for both sports to focus on promoting deserving fighters who can deliver exciting performances, rather than relying on gimmicks and hype to sell tickets. On the other hand, boxing falls victim to hype less often, and their new stars often end up shining quite bright.
I have a spirit of competition in me, and you're gonna see that come out when I fight Tank.
But the problem isn't just the players, it's somewhat the game itself too. Why? When it comes to UFC and boxing matches, anything can happen in the blink of an eye. A well-placed punch or a submission can end a fight quickly. In non-title, non-main event UFC fights, they are actually over in 18 minutes or less, including breaks. I mean, I take longer to finish a meal. On the other hand, boxing matches can last for up to 10 rounds, giving spectators plenty of time to observe the different fighting styles of the boxers. However, both sports have problems with judging that requires some improvements. The 10 points must system used in boxing seems to work better than the system used in UFC because of the longer duration of the fights. But other than that, if you like to sit back and slowly indulge in talented fighters giving it their all, you just have to watch boxing. In addition to the game naturally ending sooner, UFC fighters want to end the fight as soon as possible. One of the most frustrating things to watch in combat sports is when a UFC fighter takes their opponent to the ground and then tries to stall in order to win a decision. This technique is known as the lay and pray. Honestly, it's a far cry from the action-packed excitement that fans actually want to see. In boxing, referees encourage action throughout the fight. I think the same should be happening in the UFC too. Unfortunately, too often fighters are not immediately stood back up when the action slows down. It's up to those running running UFC to do more to discourage the lay-in-prey style of fighting and punish those who use it to their advantage. Fans want to see fighters actually engaging in exciting battles, and not just trying to run out the clock to win a decision. It seems a bit disingenuous to the game, doesn't it? But there might just be a reason for that. They're really different in nature. Boxing and UFC both require a high level of strategic thinking from their fighters, but the approach is different for each sport. In the UFC, fighters must be quick thinkers, anticipating their opponent's moves and looking for openings to strike while also avoiding getting hit. Boxers, on the other hand, have to plan several rounds ahead, carefully executing their game plan while keeping an eye out for any opportunities to land a knockout punch. This doesn't mean that one sport requires more intelligence than the other, but rather that the thought process is unique to each. In boxing, fighters must be more calculated and cerebral to succeed. Both sports are challenging in their own ways. It's fascinating to see how fighters in each discipline use their strategic skills to come out on top. But while there's no denying their differences, just the way boxing is structured makes it better to watch and enjoy as the audience. And if I'm being honest, boxers can outpunch UFC fighters anytime. For many fans of combat sports, the allure is the excitement of watching two athletes throw down in the ring or cage. While there are some amazing strikers in the UFC who have won titles with their punches, there's no denying that boxers currently have the upper hand when it comes to the art of hand striking. Boxers have an unparalleled combination of hand speed, accuracy, and power that can be breathtaking to watch. And like I said, there are some top-notch strikers in UFC as well. But boxers simply have a mastery of the sweet science of hand striking that is hard, if not impossible, to match. If you're a fan of combat sports and haven't experienced the thrill of watching a top-level boxer in action, you're definitely missing out on something truly special. Don't believe me? Just ask the fans. And as we all know, no one loves sports like boxing fans love boxing. The Mayweather vs. Pacquiao fight was a pay-per-view event that will go down in combat sports history. It was an epic matchup that shattered records and captured the attention of the world. It's hard to imagine any other combat sports organization, like the UFC or World Wrestling Entertainment, being able to create a similar level of hype and anticipation. While there are certainly exciting matchups that could be made in the UFC, like John Jones versus Cain Velasquez or Ronda Rousey versus Chris Cyborg, they simply wouldn't reach the same level of excitement and buzz as Mayweather versus Pacquiao. Now, you may agree or disagree, but that's why boxing is definitely better than UFC.